one of my favorite sports guys named Clay Travis. He had his headphones like this on this show. He was like, "Yeah, da, da, da." He looked like a fucking jerk off. He's cool as shit, but he doesn't really have any bangs, so his shit was like on his forehead like this. He looked like fucking dude from Star Trek, Geordie LaForge.
Yeah.
He's a half.
His eye visors there.
He had like a half a Geordie LaForge look. I'm like, dude, fix your headphones, man.
We are live.
Are we really?
Yeah. All right.
Shit.
Hold on. Here we go.
1935, the Lions win the NFL championship. The Detroit Tigers take the World Series. The Red Wings bring home Lord Stanley's Cup. Joe Louis begins his rise to world domination. This transforms the Motor City into Detroit, City of Champions.
Oh, there we go. We're dropping the puck. We're sticking to the ground.
Keep going.
Kicking it off. Hitting it for the fences. We've done all those things.
Yeah, now
we're lacing them up.
Now where are we at?
And we're sticking it in the ground.
Sticking in the ground.
Sticking it in the ground.
Bad.
Putting it in the water, sticking it in the ground.
Golf.
Golf. That's what you're going to go stick it in the ground, meaning, which is what we're going to get to today.
That's what we're talking
finally.
about today. Yeah, today's exciting.
Sticking it in the ground finally makes sense because up until this point, they really didn't stick anything in the ground.
No, there was no tee to stick in the ground until Walter Hagen. Made the golf, like he didn't invent the golf tee, but we're going to see right now the circumstances that led to the birth of the golf tee.
Before we stick anything anywhere, I just got to say, I'm Jamie Flanagan.
Charles Avison.
And this is Detroit City of Champions, the podcast. Talking about 1935 and all the things that led up to it, the amazing 33 championships, the trilogy of books, the screenplay.
Shirts, merchandise.
Merch. I don't have mine. I just I got
you had yours on last show. I got mine on this show. But this is I love this shirt, man. It's great.
So wearingfunny.com. You can get a hold of the merch and of course DetroitCityOfChampions.com. Getting a hold of there's other merch there. There's other shirts and the books there as well. We just want to say thank you for taking time. I just I go and I load the shows, right? And they go and they sit at this place. We use Buzzsprout to host our shows, and you go in, you can see all the analytics of how many people are listening to the episodes and where they're listening from and what devices they're listening on. It's really interesting. It's a rabbit hole you can fall down and but it's just interesting to see. And then I think about it's like, wow, that's not that many, I go, but if there were that many people in a room, you'd be like, oh, this place is packed.
Yeah.
It's like, but people have podcasts at tens of thousands of listeners. And it's, we don't have that kind of listenership right now. But still, it's like you get 100 people. You're like, well, if 100 people were sitting here with us,
that'd
be a crap ton of people.
Oh, it's a ton of people. It's entire auditorium.
I want to say thank you to each and every one of you 100 people sitting there.
Yeah.
Joining us every week.
And I want to thank you to the people listening to us in the future too, because that's one of the things that's cool is that once we have them archived on like YouTube and all this, they kind of float through the ether and they just, like eventually just somebody picks it up. Somebody might be looking up a story about like how did the golf tee get invented, and they're listening to us now. This might be the first show they've ever heard. We're talking about a whole range of, this is like a center point where they go, hey, I want to hear about some other stuff too. But
thank you to everybody who takes the time and joins us for any and all of the episodes. So thank you. But it would really help us if you left a comment. It's all the analytics.
Yeah, every comment, every everything really helps.
Subscribing to it and then making a comment is ginormous.
Oh, it's huge.
So if you could just do that. Tell a friend, that'd be fabulous. But just making a like or subscribing and then leaving a comment is fabulous to podcasters. It's the crack we live on.
It is. It is, man. Hey, man, we got one more of those likes.
Yeah, you got it.
Like I can get.
Yeah. But like I said, we were wandering through the story of 1935 and currently 10th part of
Walter Hagen. And by this point, if you've been following his Hagen is amazing. Like Hagen, and I love like the fact we've been able to unpack this story slowly but surely. But every single episode we've done, this is the 10th episode on just Walter Hagen. in the first 9, every single show is got something, like, I like to think something incredible about this guy.
The innovations, the changing the face
the whole
of the sport,
face of exactly
creating the sport.
That's exactly right. The entire world. That's when you do when you like do like a brief summary read of Walter Hagen. It does. You don't get anything for compared to how big he was. There's a whole list of all the championships he won. There's a whole bunch. Oh, he's credited with doing this and, helping popularize golf and make it like a financial windfall. But that doesn't really go far enough until you hear the story and you kind of dive into who he was and, and what he did and like what the world of golf was like in his day to see how far it came from where he started. And the game of golf had been around. Sure, all the way back to like Mary Queen of Scots, but I'm talking about in actually like, as a, where there's the British Open and there's tournaments and there's
galleries and there's people.
But I'm saying even before Hagen came along, it was already an established game, especially in Britain. They'd already been playing it for at least 50 years, as like a fairly standardized sport.
But it wasn't to the magnitude.
But not what it is after he left. Yeah.
It was like an intramural, like a big intramural league.
But I'm saying, but his involvement in the game, he represents this era which shapes this thing, transforms it into transforms it.
I would say it's transformative.
Absolutely.
For
sure. There's and when he leaves the game, it's going to be like you could call it the modern world of golf after he leaves. I mean, much of the stuff, and as we're going to get into today. He's just even like the creation, the evolution of like the golf tee.
Yeah.
That's like such a standardized thing, and golf, you don't even think about that. Like, the golf tee's always been there. That's not the case at all.
And it's kind of neat because, your books, the trilogy of books, Detroit City of Champions, and you reference a lot of primary sources and early sources and early news clippings. And Walter himself wrote a book. We've been referencing a lot.
Basically everything, all the questions. Why not go right to the Hague himself?
And it's coming from his words, which has been fun,
it's awesome because he's
my humble opinion.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's the other thing is like when you read all these, like, cool. We started out the entire series, the first series talking about, throwing some of the kind of colorful quotes about him. And they're like, oh, he was a kind of, he was a playboy. There's nobody that could, have like so many awful shots in the same game and still win a tournament and all these different things. But it's like when you actually hear those stories about why they said that, that's when you get that. That's when you understand, you at least begin to understand, who he was and the sort of impact he had on like all around him.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at.
So it's 1922. We're swinging our way home from a dismal performance. In the British Open.
He won that. He won the
22. He won.
Yeah, 20. That's what the show we did last week. The 22. Right. Remember, because he had 2 British Opens he lost. And then in 22, remember he was trying to, he worked on his game and got, remember he went to Jesse Livermore and got the, when he was going for his 3rd shot at the Open.
I just thought he won the French.
No, that was the previous. He finished, he did so that was dismal. Dismal appearance in his first British Open, 53rd out of 54 golfers.
I got to listen to this podcast more often.
Yeah, you got to you got to be present while we're doing the show.
I got to remember what the hell we were doing.
Present, it's all good. We cover a lot of stuff.
So, but yeah, all right. So 22, he did.
So he wins.
Right.
Before the 22 British Open, of course, he was incredibly short on money. And I'm going to read a quote here that talks about that. It's like, Hagen I have a quote today that's, one of the later quotes we're going to read, that he talks about how this is a regular theme in his life. He is a playboy, man. He likes to spend money and he's terrible. He's not good at like working on like a long-term plan for this. He makes a bunch of money. He just blows the money. And then he's like such a famous star. And he's like, he's just like, well, I got to go play another 3 golf tournaments or something, and I got to, so he kind of, sometimes he's short on cash. And he's got to go do something to make a bunch of money. So prior to the 22 British Open, which is his 3rd attempt, he went to Jesse Livermore, who is just if anybody didn't hear us get to that segment last week, Jesse Livermore is a stock market trader. And as much as people want to talk about Michael Burry, in some of these great stock traders of all time, Jesse Livermore shorted the 1929 stock market crash, shorted it, and made $100 million shorting. And like, there's people wanting to murder him because they thought he was the one that caused the crash, the big one. He was called the Great Bear because he shorted that stock market crash.
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
I don't think he's an innocent man.
No. So Hagen went to him, who was like a friend of his, and it was like, and Jesse Livermore just tells him, do what I do, buy when I buy and sell when I sell. And at the end of every day, do not have a share of stock left with you. So he just like sat in Jesse Livermore's office, and the guy made him a ton of money. He goes out to the 1922 British Open, wins it because he gets to like not have to worry about money out there.
Yeah.
Gives his $350 British Open winning check to his caddy. $350. So for winning the British Open, he gave it to his caddy. And so he goes, so he wins the 1920. He wins his first British Open. Now he's basically won everything. There's nothing. He's the champion of all these surveys. I mean, by this point, his credentials are so huge, I can't even really read them. You have to just go and look at the list, because it just be, it's almost like you'd almost like
comical.
Yeah, but you'd almost like get bored if I just sit there and go, oh, won this championship, won 3 times Western Open. He's won so many at this point. He's a legend already in his own time. So when he gets back so upon his arrival back in New York, that's how we finished the episode last week, was that when he gets back, he arrives in New York, and he'd called ahead to let people know he's coming, and he gets this ticker tape parade.
Right.
And so they're saying this is like, he said, as far as I know, this was the first ticker tape parade for a sports athlete ever upon arrival back in New York. And so he gets this huge ticker tape parade because he's the first native born American to win the British Open. So he's like he's a massive star. So when he gets back, there's a famous golfer named Gene Sarazen, and his name is going to be mentioned here and there, as we progress with the show. This is his first appearance so far, but Gene Sarazen wins the PGA championship in America. And so Walter Hagen comes back, and so it's kind of funny because he's like, well, I'm the European champion and you're the American champion. So why don't we have an international championship to decide who's the guy, like Hagen's the British champion. He's the US champion. So they have this informal championship. It doesn't, it's unofficial. But they call it the international championship match between Hagen and Gene Sarazen. And this is why I want to talk about this first little, we've talked about just a little bit of a color story, and there's a great little color story with Gene Sarazen from this exhibition championship. Like I say, it's the quote unquote international championship between the British champion, which is Hagen, who's American, and Sarazen, who's the PGA champion in the States. So it starts off saying, so the match was played at Oakmont. And so Oakmont is near Pittsburgh on October 6th, 1922. And so Hagen starts over the Oakmont course. I was leading by 2 I was leading by 2 up at the end of the 36 holes that night after the trip. So I'll digress. So there was basically 2 days. Each day was 36 holes. All right. So after the first 36 holes, they moved to another course called Westchester Biltmore. And so anyway, so that's where he says over the Oakmont course, I was leading by 2 up at the end of the 36 holes. So they'd finished their first day. That night, after the trip up from Pittsburgh, some of my fellow pros sat in my room looking over ties I had brought back from England. One of the fellows picked up a particularly loud number in a red, blue, and yellow combination and said, "What do you expect to do with this? How about sending it over to Gene with a cute little note from some girl?" We wrote. So he has this tie that he bought that he doesn't even, it's this ridiculous tie.
Yeah.
And so they're like, "What are you going to do with this?" They're making fun of Walter Hagen for it. They're saying, "Where did you get this tie? This tie is terrible." Right. And he's like, "Well, why don't we get Gene to wear it?" Just meaning Gene Sarazen for this next day's championship. So that's why they say, "How about sending it over to Gene with a cute little note from some girl?" So this is the note. "Dear Gene, you are my ideal golfer and a clever little fellow. I am sending you this beautiful tie and hope you will wear it when you play Walter Hagen. If you do, you will win." So that's the note that Hagen and his buddies, they're probably drinking, having fun.
Wait.
You got to send this to Sarazen.
Spritz some lipstick, spritz some perfume on it.
Exactly.
No.
So they sent him this tie, this ridiculous, horrible tie to wear. And it's this girl going, "Hey, Gene, you're my favorite. Can you wear this tie? You will win." So he says, so Hagen continues, When I walked out on the tee the next morning at the Westchester Biltmore, there stood Gene in a bright new golfing outfit, sporting that red, blue, and yellow tie and grinning from ear to ear.
Oh, my God.
I'm all ready, he announced. Let's get going. Okay, I said, but answer one question. Where'd you get that funny tie? Never mind that, he said in his cocky fashion. You think you've got all the dames on your side, but you haven't. This is my mascot. Just wait and see. We got underway. Gene starting off the second 36 holes 2 down. But it wasn't long before he picked up 2 holes and we were even. He continued to gain and went one ahead and then another. And that was the way we finished. Saracen 2 up. After the match, Gene was still wearing the tie, but was laughing about it, for he'd learned of the joke. Well, Walters, so you gave me a tie, he said. Here it is. I don't need it anymore. You can have it back for luck. That was one time a joke boomeranged on me. The darn thing actually did bring him luck. So he kind of knew about it and figured it out and still wore the tie. And you know, it's just kind of a funny little exchange between them.
That's great.
2 legends of their era. So
yeah.
Anyways, Hagen continues actually to talk about during the last sort of day of that tournament. Gene Saracen had appendicitis.
Ooh.
And he was like actually pretty cramped up with pain, like immediately like had to have like emergency appendicitis. He's like Saracen beat me and like was immediately hospitalized thereafter. So that guy had some guts, man, had some gumption, you know. So so anyway, so moving right along, you know, to get really into the meat of the what we're talking about today is really everything we're gonna be talking about today after this focuses on there's going to be this exhibition tour that Hagen is going to take with a guy named Joe Kirkwood. And so just a little background on Joe Kirkwood. We mentioned him in the last episode because he was over at the British Open too. In fact, there's a photo of Hagen, Kirkwood, and a couple other guys coming back, a couple other legends coming back from the British Open that we threw on the last. There's 4 of them on a ship.
Oh, yeah.
4 of them on a ship. That's the last one one of the last things we showed last show. In fact, I have another. This is the one I missed. You put the wrong date on. I have an updated photo because this one says 1922. It was after the 1921. I actually have the updated photo of it for you. Actually, no, that's not the one that was messed up. It was the other one. Anyways, so this is a photo. Kirkwood is in that photo. He is the guy in the very where we got it. Hold on, let me see. Where's that image?
The second one, Kirkwood.
There he is. Yeah, the second guy in. Yeah. Second guy from the left is Joe Kirkwood. Yeah. So anyways, so that's them. That's actually that's after the British Open. Hagen's got the British Open trophy and they're headed back to America on the Cunard line. So that's the photo of them. So anyways, so Joe Kirkwood is an Australian golfer who Hagen had become friends with at a tournament at Pinehurst, North Carolina in 1921. So he'd known Joe for a year. And so Joe Kirkwood was the Australian Open champion. He's a New Zealand champ. He's like basically one of the best, if not the best golfer in Australia. And so he was famous. Joe Kirkwood was for being a trick shot artist.
Oh,
and he developed this skill as from entertaining World War I veterans in Australia. So there's another quick quote I want to read. If you want to cue up that video, because we actually have a video. If you're watching here, if you can't see it, you just look up Joe Kirkwood trick shots, and there's a ton of videos. But this is like my favorite one because it really shows the stuff we're gonna be mentioning here. But again, it's Joe Kirkwood. If you look it up on YouTube, there's a ton of stuff on it.
Right.
So anyway, so this is what he talks about with Joe Kirkwood. So he talks about Joe Kirkwood's trick shot, but those trick shots of Joe's were not lucky shots. He had a golf ball trained. He began doing the trick shots to entertain the wounded and crippled Australian veterans of World War I. First, he showed those veterans how to hit the ball for varying distances. Then he showed them fancy shots. I've seen him hit a ball as hard and as far with his putter as with his driving iron. He could slice or hook a ball with any club, making it turn from left to right or from right to left. He'd play a full drive from the crystal of an open-faced watch or from the toe of a spectator's shoe. He would hole 6 balls all stymied in a row in rapid succession. He'd take a full shot at a ball and without moving from his stance would catch it as it popped up right in front of him. He could turn his face away and hit 12 balls in rapid succession, full shots. He'd play right-hand shots with a left-hand club and vice versa. It was all child's play to him. Every place we toured, Joe's trick shots brought great bursts of applause from the galleries. so he's going with a trick shot artist who's also a phenomenal golfer. And so there's another little story that kind of Hagen goes on about that before they left for this tour, Hagen had to talk to Joe Kirkwood and say, and this, we have a picture up on the screen. This picture is literally as they're leaving for this tour.
Oh, okay.
So they're headed out, and this is the prior, the tour photo, with Joe Kirkwood on the right and Hagen to the left. So anyways, it's funny because Hagen actually has to set Joe Kirkwood down and say, because I guess Joe Kirkwood was a bit of kind of like a rube, at least to Hagen, because he's like wearing suspenders. And what does he say? He said he's wearing suspenders and sleeve garters, which I don't even know. I can imagine what those are. But
the guy that was wearing Farrell's ice cream.
Yeah. But like, I don't know why that was such a big deal for him to like not wear those. You know, like why would Hagen actually says book. He goes, I had to sit him down and say no more suspenders and no more sleeve garters. And he's like that. He goes, that was his first step into being the Beau Bremmel of golf. He actually helped Joe Kirkwood with his golf style, because I guess he was not really the most well-dressed golfer. And Hagen's like, if you're rolling out with me, who's like the number one best dressed golfer out there, you're gonna be like at least number 2. You know, if you're not gonna be, I can't roll around with you looking like that. So he's got this section where he talks about that. So do we have that video queued up with Joe Kirkwood? I do. We can't talk over once it starts. That's fine. Okay, so what we're gonna see here, this is just a quick little 40-second video. And so those that are just listening to the podcast, is there audio on it? I don't think so. No. Okay, fair play. I think it's a silent. All right. So we still can't talk once it's queued up. Well, we can talk, but people aren't gonna hear it. Well, there's nothing. I don't think there's sound on it. All right, there might be. Just hit it. Yeah. All right, here we go. There's trick golf shots. All right. So he's looking at the camera as he's hitting the golf balls the other direction. He just cleaned about 5. Now he's got three clubs, and he hits 3 golf balls at the same time. This one he's hitting a ball off a guy's shoe. Yeah. Right off it like it's nothing. This time so this guy's showing him this. It's on a girl's heel. Right. And this guy hit it with his ball. Here, you can see driving it off off another shoe. This one, he's got 8 balls lined up on this guy on his knee, off his chest, off his face, off the top of his hat. God, it shows you that guy is. You can just see the kind of stuff he was doing. Amazing trick shots. Again, if you're listening to the audio podcast, that was one of the episodes you need to go see the little clips. Yeah, if you look up Joe Kirkwood on YouTube, there's a ton of them. Yeah, and I mean, there's a bunch. I just like that one because it's a really quick little example of the kind of stuff that he used to do. All right. So, and I just thought it's great. But he was decent on the course. Oh, it was great. Yeah, he played in the British Open with Hagen. I don't know what he finished, but he won the Australian Open. He won the New Zealand. I don't know. He could make the cut. 100%. Hagen even said he's a great golfer. And he was a phenomenal trick shot artist too, that's what made this tour so interesting for people. And that's what made this whole thing, where we're going with this is that so you've got Hagen, which is the best golfer in the world. And then you've got Joe Kirkwood, who is a phenomenal golfer, but he's also a trick shot artist. And so the way they kind of build it, so the tour, the way it was set up was they would charge $500 for an appearance at a golf course. Yeah. Or so there was their choice. It was their choice. They either got $500 for an appearance, or they could 4 bottles of booze. They could take it off their tab, I'm sure. Yeah. But or they got to keep the gate receipt. So it was their choice. Okay. It was their choice whether they got $500 or gate, whatever was more. Yeah. It was the gate receipts or the $500. And Hagen even said a few times, he said there was many times during this tour where they just kept the gate receipts and it was 2 to 1. They the gate receipts were twice. And again, $500 an appearance just for shooting a game of golf on a course, or they kept double that money in the gate receipts. And again, keep that put in the context. He made $350. $350 was his payout for winning the 1922 British Open, the championship. So what does that show about how big he is? Yeah, that he's making $500 an appearance or double that for just for playing a game of golf on a random course. And it was across the U.S. He with stops in Illinois, St. Louis, Louisville, Milwaukee, Detroit, just all the way across the United States. They went everywhere. And so the kind of the way that the whole thing went down was that Hagen was the straight man. He was just like the world's greatest golfer, whereas Kirkwood was again this was the trick shot, was the gag man. He was like doing all these gag setups and doing all kinds of weird stuff. But and then they'd play like local dignitaries and play against local like celebrities or mayors or whoever, and then they would, Joe Kirkwood might drive his ball off the mayor's knee or something. You can see how that'd be interesting. Yeah. And so anyways, but what's kind of interesting was the contrast, because as much as Hagen was the straight man, he was also like, whenever there was any reporters around or there's any kind of media to be done, he was like the most flamboyant, talkative, giving every interview you can possibly give, interacting with the crowds. But at the same time, Kirkwood was like silent, like he never talked. Hagen even said he had difficulty even getting a yes or a no out of him for media attention. Like he was, I don't know if he was just naturally quiet or if he just didn't really like just doing like big public appearance type things. But that was the kind of the contrast, was that Kirkwood was the gag man, but he didn't talk to anybody, and then Hagen was the straight man, but he was like kind of, like the Mo of the Three Stooges, like he's the big, the leader and the talker, but it's kind of the straight man where you got Curly running around, that's not really talking to anybody.
Yeah.
So anyways, so that's the setup there. That's the setup for this. And so now that kind of leads us into this story of the golf tee. And so the story of the golf tee is actually pretty well known. I did a little kind of a quick Google search on it. And this story that, there's an evolution. There was a couple different people that came out with like versions of the golf tee, because prior to this whole thing, basically there was a couple like kind of evolutions of like how they teed off. And the first one, whereas they would have a bucket. They would just have a bucket of sand, and they would like the groundskeeper would like wet the sand, and you just take a handful of sand out of the bucket and like mold it into whatever type of tee you wanted on the ground.
Oh, wow.
And then there was another thing where where there was like a cone, like a cup. You could like take a cup of the dirt and then like you almost make like a sand castle for you to tee off on.
Yeah.
Like set it up so you could like, make your own. It's like a dirt tee basically.
Right.
So they had there's like a couple different variations. So like, that's the way golf was done. That's the way golf was done. There was a couple people that had tried to do golf tees, but they were like expensive and kind of bulky. It looked like almost like a stapler. One of them looked like a stapler almost that you put a golf ball on, and like it just didn't go. And then there was another one that started out, but it wasn't like, didn't have like the divot in the top to like cradle the ball like the eventual golf tee did.
Right.
But so anyway, so none of them really stuck. So here's the story. This is Hagen. Like all these different things online, they do credit Hagen for this tour for when this golf tee got huge.
Right.
But what's cool is that this is the story of the golf tee from Hagen's own perspective. He's telling like how the story happened. So this is Hagen, in Hagen's own words, how the golf tee what got huge. So he actually says, he begins, for over 400 years, golfers had pinched a bit of sand into a suitable tee for their drives. If one did not use sand, he'd hit the earth with his club or kick up a small amount of turf for teeing the ball. There had been no artificial change in the practice since the game's origin. In 1920, Dr. William Lowell, a New Jersey dentist, a novice golfer with no great respect for the revered traditions of the game, whittled out a little wooden peg on which to mount his ball for the drive. Playing companions ridiculed the idea, but his sons induced the doctor to patent the gadget and put it on the market. The little peg thus manufactured, painted red, was advertised to the golf world as the Ready Tee. Professional golfers dismissed it as silly and refused to accept the tees as gifts. Amateurs shrugged off their use, and even the ladies of the game looked down their pretty noses at Dr. Lowell's little invention. Probably nothing would have come of the tees had not Joe Kirkwood and I decided to use them as a sort of added attraction on our exhibition tour of 1922. That and the fact that the good doctor shelled out $1,500 as a persuader. So they didn't do it for free.
Yeah.
So anyways, yeah. So that I think that's all of that. So let me see here. Right here. So he says, Alex Smith told me sometime later, after Joe and I had used the tees in our matches at the Shennescosset Club in New London, Connecticut, where he was pro, that he took more than 20 orders for those silly little tees. He said he put in a stock, but felt they were only a passing fad. Joe and I strutted around the courses with bright red tees stuck behind our ears. At each tee, we used them and left them, and the kids scrambled onto the course, grabbing them as souvenirs. They became so popular that the club officials found it necessary to rope off the driving tees and the fairways to control the gallery. This was the first time in the history of golf in the United States that the gallery control ropes were used. So the golf tees led to the control ropes that they used to keep the crowds back from the
stopping on the
from the whenever there's a tournament. That's like what led. He's like, they'd never even use the ropes until they had golf tees, which were like the equivalent of like a baseball getting hit into the crowd.
Yeah.
And and we have the ready tees up on the screen right now.
Yeah.
But this is like the original packaging with that little red tip, and it said ready tee on the actual butt of the thing.
Yeah.
So anyways, this is what it's like, basically like a fan catching a baseball in a crowd, which was that's what these golf tees were, and it just became huge. It just became huge for these for these fans, like the kids would scramble on to grab the tee, and Hagen and them, he said, we strut around the course with the
I'd run out there to try to grab one. I'd be on
if it was Walter Hagen.
I'm that kind of fan.
That's thing.
I'd go diving for the board. Sure.
Well, yeah, me too. They I mean, like I say, but what's interesting is like this tournament was so big. I'm gonna bring that picture on.
Oh yeah.
So that's what's kind of interesting about this tournament, about this exhibition tour, is it was such a big deal. It launched this into orbit. I was reading an article on a website called golfballfactory.com. I'm not sure how the pure accuracy of it, but he says that this year these ready tees sold like $100,000 in sales. I mean, this tee concept went into orbit. And it's like everybody started doing it because Hagen was doing it. But it kind of brings up a couple little interesting points here where, especially since Hagen at the very beginning says everybody thought they were ridiculous. Yeah. No pros wanted to use them. Amateurs like, that's ridiculous. Yeah. And now in the modern day,
it up.
But like Walt's teeing it up. Everybody, that's the biggest craze.
Oh yeah, you won't see a person not using a tee.
That's what I'm saying. Today,
it's a super oddity if someone isn't for some reason.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. So now it's a complete flip. So if somebody from the past, if somebody goes up and doesn't use a tee and wants to ball up some dirt, you're like, what are you doing?
Oh, yeah.
But that's one of the things that's so interesting from this story is he's saying everybody thought it's ridiculous. Like there's a lesson to be learned in this. You see, there's a lesson to be learned as far as like keeping an open mind. Hagen did it, of course, for the 1500, but this guy's walking around and people, the golf tee, they're going, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like if you're talking like a motivation story, this guy's a great example. He's like, I just invented this golf tee, and they're like, we use dirt. We don't use a tee. Yeah. And now it's completely reversed. So that's like, so it's just interesting how there's that. I mean, it's almost like a lesson to be learned, which is like judge something by its actual utility, right? Not by just by the fact that just because nobody, there's a saying that says the most dangerous words in the English language are that's the way it's always been done. Those are the most dangerous words in the English language. That's the way it's always been done. We've always used dirt in a cone, or we've always scooped a fistful of mud out of the pot in a bucket and formed our own golf tee. That's the way it's always been done. We don't want to use that stupid golf. There's something to be learned from that. So.
Yeah, there is. I just getting education flashbacks when you say things like that.
Oh, really? Where have you heard that?
That's just how we do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's not good. Not good.
When I say the most dangerous English, those are the most dangerous words in the English language, because that's the thing is they're like, oh, well, we never do it like that before, and it's like, well, why don't you try doing it? And what's funny is that especially like I got my own, it's really the entire City of Champions thing, like that goes right down my alley, and it's of particular interest to me, that concept, because again, the City of Champions story, we got the greatest season in the history of American sport.
Yeah.
And there's, what coverage is there ever? What there's, besides us putting this stuff out there, there's nothing out there. Nobody talks, it's just 75th anniversary, 100th anniversary, whatever it is, it's just, I mean, there's none of the players' names are hanging from the walls. None of them are retired. Nobody, there's just no discussion anywhere on it. And it's like, and so it's, it's that concept that I've been going against. I have this baseball analytics discovery trying to bring this out, And it's that concept that I've been fighting. So, for my, that's what my entire career is based on, trying to overcome that concept. So, for me in particular, that concept resonates massively, because it's like, that's what I have. I'm like, hey, we got the greatest season ever, we should talk about this. And they're like, well, no, we've never talked about that story before. Why would we start talking about, it's just not that big of a deal. Or,
right.
Hey, I've got this analytics thing, a new way to do baseball, a new way to build baseball teams. And they're like, no, well, that's not the way we've done things in the past, and it's just, that concept, it's just, so as small as of a subject it is with the golf tee, you're like, oh, it's the golf tee, it's a cute little story. But for me, it's like, like I say, it's just it's something that's worth noting, because that's a guy that broke through. It's a guy that broke through, that goes, yeah, it looks stupid, but it's great, And then Hagen's doing it. He found his way through, which was to get Hagen to use him on his tour, and the thing changed the world. It's a whole different world now.
Yeah, that's a good. Was a good $1,500 bet there.
Yeah, for sure. So that's pretty much, I've got one more, the story. So that's pretty much it. I just want to talk about this tour they're on, the kind of the development of the golf tee.
Yeah.
And I also there's one little last story, and this is kind of a funny story this is actually from down the road. It's 1929 with Hagen, because Hagen and Joe Kirkwood went on another tournament. They went on another exhibition run, and it's just kind of funny, because it was something we were actually talking about at the beginning of the show, and it kind of it's just kind of funny, because it shows another example, like who Hagen was.
Wow.
And I don't know if we'd ever get back to this story once we get to this point in Hagen's life.
All right, well, let's get to it.
So anyway, it's actually a quote. It's just easier to read it than to describe it.
Right.
So in 1929, Joe and I met in Los Angeles to get our reservations for the first leg of a 6 months tour of Australia and Japan. Joe was always a penurious soul. He kept account of every dime he made, and most of the coins stayed close to him. I had been living pretty well, not participating too much in golf tournaments. Consequently, I was short of cash, and I put the bite on Joe for $1,000. So he runs out of dough.
I would gladly pay you Thursday for a hamburger today.
In this case, he's looking for $1,000. So he's like, I was short on cash, and hey, Joe, I'm good for it. We're going to go on an exhibition. Hey. We get $1,000, right? So he let me have it after some argument, and with the understanding it would purchase my steamship ticket, because they're trying to get to us to Australia and Japan for the 6 month tour. So my intentions were good. I usually just had a chance to squeeze money for luck before going out and rounding up another batch. So I just love that line. I usually had a chance to squeeze money for luck before going out and rounding up another batch, like just to give it a hug before it left me. Like it just had enough time to touch it, and then it left. So he said, this time was no exception. A beautiful diamond bracelet for a very lovely girl, a Bon Voyage gift. Why did I say that right? Come on. I'm going to start over. A beautiful diamond bracelet for a lovely girl, a Bon Voyage gift, interfered with my passage reservation. I admitted to Joe that the money was no longer with me, and he unbuttoned his pocket once more and paid my way. So the $1,000 Joe Kirkwood gave him to pay for his ticket.
I'm going to buy a ticket, or maybe a bracelet for this hottie.
He got it. So he blew the whole $1,000 on that bracelet for this girl, and she was getting on the same ship as he was. This Bon Voyage gift. See here he said?
Yeah.
He goes, before going out, and so he said, this time was no exception. A beautiful diamond bracelet for a lovely, very lovely girl, a Bon Voyage gift, be interfered with my passage. Giving her this gift interfered with his passage reservation because he blew his money on it. He goes, I told Joe, I don't have that money anymore. And then, but what's funny is the next bit where Joe finally says, when the girl proudly showed Joe the sparklers on her arm, his eyes really popped. He got the idea immediately. We steamed on for Honolulu with all our funds in Joe's possession. He kept books and held on to most of the cash for the entire tour. Hagen gave this girl a friggin' diamond bracelet before he did, but it was all of his dough.
Yeah.
He friggin' gave. You can make a movie on this guy, man. He's the greatest character. But the thing is, he was short on cash already. He had the money he gave away was the money he borrowed, and Joe had already yelled at him. He even said, I'd been living pretty well, not participating too much in the golf tournaments. Consequently, I was short of cash, and I put the bite on Joe for $1,000. He let me have it after some argument and with the understanding would purchase my steamship ticket. So Joe was saying, what are you doing? You're screwing up. You're not doing right. Yeah. And I'm give you this 1,000, but only so you can get to Australia.
Right.
So that's it, right? Yeah. That's the only reason I'm giving you 1,000. You hear me? And the next thing,
I'll probably make more money with you there. So
exactly,
all right.
I need you there to make a bunch of money, and I know I'm going to get paid back because we make a bunch of money every time we do these exhibitions. But Hagen takes that grand and he's like, "Oh, totally, Joe." 100%. I wouldn't spend that money. Right. I wouldn't spend that 1,000 on anything but that boat ticket.
Yeah.
Right. And then
anybody see that dame I was talking to?
She goes, "Hey Joe, look at this bracelet Walter bought me." And he's going, "Oh my God, Hagen, you're such a jerk, man." And he's like, and Hagen didn't even have a ticket. He had to borrow money from him again to actually get the ticket. So I had to throw that in. That Perfect. Guy, Hagen is just it's just freaking awesome, man. Like I say, you could his story it'd be such a great film with this guy in it.
Yeah. Well, he's part of the screenplay, isn't he?
He just makes a brief appearance, but okay. I really focus the screenplay on the three teams and Joe Louis, just because honestly I wanted to lock the bulk of the story down for just the copyright of the idea.
Sure.
So if it's already written out in a screenplay form, if somebody tries to walk in and take the ideas, I've kind of like copyrighted the entire thing. Yeah. So, but it can easily be expanded, especially to involve some of these.
Oh yeah.
I would love it. That's.
You know what you recommended to me was the Outlander.
Yeah.
Crazy watching that.
Oh, you been watching it?
Yeah.
Good, man. No, we're drinking I got this whiskey from my mom. This what was it called? The Sassenach whiskey, and that's the name of the girl in Outlander. She got it from me because she loves that show too.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, she's the one that recommended it to me. So no, it's a great show. I love the Outlander.
It's a good story. You got some naughty bits in it.
Totally naughty. It's like softcore porn in some spots. You're like, oh my God. And the fact that my mom recommended it to me, I'm like, wow, what are you watching? This is bad. Some of the stuff is bad, real bad.
It's probably like Joe on his steamships.
Yeah, like Hagen. Hagen on a Cunard line.
Yeah.
Because he met up with the sisters in that one trip over he was taking. He met up with
the actress.
Yeah, with the actress.
Mm-hmm.
The Talmadge. The Talmadge, one of the Constance Talmadge, Connie Talmadge from the Talmadge sisters. Yeah. He's like, man, that trip was awesome. The trip over, I got to meet Connie Talmadge. He's like, Hagen is a freaking player, man. Yeah. He buys a girl a diamond bracelet.
$1,000 diamond bracelet.
Yeah.
And that in today's
not even his money.
That's 1922 money.
Mm-hmm.
That's like
a lot. Yeah.
6, 9, 10 grand.
$1,000 today is a lot.
Yeah.
You're just gonna give some girl you met at the dock who's getting on the same ship as you. You're gonna buy her a bracelet of $1,000. And that's even today's money. If it was $1,000 today, you'd be like, what are you doing? Hagen's like, I'm just doing my thing. I'm trying to get ready for the tournament. That's what I do. Like trying to get ready for the exhibitions. So it's just I love Hagen, man. Like the more you dive into him too, you're just like, it's just, So this is the golf tees invented. The restraining ropes for the gallery are invented. It's like, it's just another day. Just another year for Hagen.
Walt,
it's just another day, innovating shaping the way that we view golf to this very day. Just another year for him.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to continue on the next time. We'll more of Walter's story as we move towards Ryder Cups and
we get into all of it. Yeah,
a little bit more Detroit stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The Oakland Hills parties going on.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not sure what we're going to be talking about next week, but.
They're on the way. It's all on the way.
It's all on the way. It's up and coming.
And so stick around. Thank you for joining us and being part of the party, liking, subscribing, leaving comments, all those podcast things and all the podcast
sharing
places. Appreciate it. Chris, thanks for designing up those shirts and getting them up there on wearingfunny.com.
We love them.
And I'm gonna wear my second. I bought a second version. I'll wear the other one next week. And we'll do this again next time, and we'll do it with you. Thanks for being there. It's Detroit, City of Champions.